Inshallah. AssalamuAlaikum MacMSA. Welcome to the Gender Interaction Workshop and Q&A. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, I'm going to go through the itinerary very quickly, inshallah. So just so all of us have an idea of how this event's going to go, inshallah, and what we're going to discuss today and how we're going to do exactly that. So, of course, alhamdulillah, we have Sheikh Hosam, which Sister Sada will introduce very shortly. And so we're going to have a 30-minute kind of introduction, we're going to go over, not introduction rather, but there's going to be the first part of the event, which is more focused on questions that all of you have submitted before the event. So I know that there are some people that submitted questions that they might not be here to hear the answer to. So we're going to go through all of those Q&A and those general questions submitted on the form with Sheikh Hosam now. We're going to have a Quran recitation before that, as well as a brief introduction, which inshallah I will start with, and Sister Sada will carry on and help me co-host the event. MashaAllah, I want to shout out Sheikh Hosam for coming out and helping with the event, and Sister Sada for taking the initiative on a project like this. May Allah reward you both. Ameen. So, inshallah, I'm just going to quickly preface the topic. A lot of us, in the MSA, we know about, especially in the MSA rather, we know about the different, gender boundaries and interactions that we have as an MSA in terms of PPL, like public, purposeful, and limited. We also know about, and especially at our MSA, the rules of thirds, having a third person when you're communicating. And, for example, the importance of not being in khalwa or seclusion, and how that works. But the thing is that a lot of these lines, they have to be drawn out properly, because a lot of the things that we think we know about gender interactions are the things that we think are firm. We might not know exactly how those lines should be drawn. Things that we think are fundamentally, must be so, or, things that we think are lenient or lax. It might be that we're incorrect in our assumption. So for the sake of that, achieving that purpose of, helping us understand exactly, what does it mean, to be, Islamically, what does gender interactions mean in an Islamic context? What does it mean to have a third, or should we have a third? All of these general questions. Inshallah, to address these and to clarify our misconceptions, or rather validify our thoughts on the topic, we wanted to invite Sheikh Hosam and have a Q&A and an overall attempt to understand exactly what gender interactions is and how we should navigate, being believers and interacting with the opposite gender. So inshallah, I'll hand it over to Sister Sada, inshallah.
All right, Assalamualaikum everyone. I just wanted to say again, Jazakallah khair for all of you guys for coming out. MashaAllah, we have a huge turnout, and I pray that inshallah this is a beneficial event for all of you guys. So today we have Sheikh Hosam Helal, and I'm sure most of you guys know him. He has been one of our most prominent instructors within the MSA. Sheikh Hosam has completed his studies, Islamic studies at Al-Azhar University. He was a local imam at the Hamilton Mountain Masjid a few years back, and that's how our MSA got really connected. He was a chaplain at Brock University, and he is now the imam and the youth and education manager at ISNA. So he's done a lot of projects, Quran Journey being one of them. And we're really excited and humbled to have him here to do the talk on gender interaction. So Sheikh, whenever you're ready, you can take it away and we'll start.
Okay, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. I begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I send my peace and salutations and blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, acknowledging that whomever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, none can lead astray, and whomever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows to go astray, none can guide. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to truth, to guide us to clarity, to give us the discipline and the strength required to hold on to truth, and to give us the generosity and the compassion to be able to show truth and to embody it in a wise and in a respectful and a compassionate manner. Ya Rabb, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. So I'll begin inshallah with a very quick recitation from the Quran, and then after the recitation we'll go inshallah straight into the discussion bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. This topic is a very sensitive one because we have very polarizing views in the Muslim community. We have people that will get very upset when when they, for example, see a sister dressed in a specific way and behaving in a specific way, and engaging with others in a specific way. And then we have also sisters who can get very upset with brothers when they are maybe aggressive in their approach or judgmental in their approach. And sometimes it can be framed as a battle between the genders. There's a battle between the males, the brothers, and a battle between the females, the sisters. And it shouldn't be that way, and it should not be framed that way. And things are much simpler than sometimes we present them. But I do have to remind us again that it's not for the brothers to tell the sisters what to do, and it's not for the sister to tell the brothers what to do. We both have a mandate and a commitment that we've taken with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to observe specific boundaries that He has set, and to respect in terms of our discussions and our conversations and the way that we behave and the way that we engage. So this is coming from the Quran and the Sunnah. This is coming from whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say something, we accept those, and we accept them with an open heart. And whenever something is left outside of the Quran and the Sunnah, we can engage in ijtihad, we can engage in forming creating informed opinions based on the areas that are clear in the Quran and the Sunnah. So let's begin with a few things. Number one, okay, and I want to kind of jump straight into the topic and really be as concise as possible today, and I ask Allah to make it easy. Ya Rabb, ameen, ameen, ameen. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri, ya Rabb, ameen. Wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So the first thing that I want us to remember is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the sister the hijab for a reason. Allah obligated the hijab for a reason. What is the difference between a sister wearing the hijab and not wearing the hijab? One, when she's not wearing the hijab, she is in a state where she's again in a private sphere. She's with her family, the mahrams from her family, her father, her mother, other sisters in the community, her uncle, as the ayah in the Quran specifies who the maharim are, who the people that are considered to be mahram. Like you cannot marry them; they're forbidden for you to marry. So you're allowed to basically show your hair, among other things. Tamam? So the minute she puts on the hijab, what does that mean? That means she's entering the public sphere. So in order for the sister to enter the public sphere, she should have the hijab, and that's the consensus of the scholars. How do we know that? When the ayah of the hijab was obligated, and we have a lot of progressive Muslims, so-called progressive Muslims, who will argue against the hijab, and they will say the hijab is not a fard, it's a cultural thing that was inherited by the Arabs, and it's all this stuff is not true, because the ayat in the Quran are very clear. وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جُوبِهِنَّ. So when the ayah of the hijab was revealed, and this is very important, when the ayah of the hijab was revealed, listen to this carefully. When the ayah of the hijab was revealed, some women came to Rasulullah ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, we don't have extra cloth to basically cover, because the khimar meant you're going to cover the head, as was the habit, or the culture at the time, you're going to keep the khimar and you're going to dangle the khimar to basically cover your chest area. So some of the women said, Ya Rasulullah, we don't have extra cloth. So like we don't have enough cloth to cover this entire area. What should we do? Do we have a small period? Do we have a gap until we have to execute the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Rasulullah's response was, let those women who don't have cloth borrow from the women who do have cloth, so that we can be quick to implement the mandate of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same thing when alcohol was forbidden, people rushed to throw out the alcohol because they wanted to have nothing to do with the unlawful. And of course, there are lots of other evidences from the Quran and from the Sunnah, the lived experience of the Muslims, to suggest and to make it very clear that the hijab is an obligation. Right. Having accepted that the hijab is an obligation, why is that important? Because once the sister puts on the hijab, she has every right to be in the public sphere. Tamam? She has every right to voice her concerns, to participate publicly, to present, as long as she's maintaining respectful hijab. And she belongs in the public sphere as much as you do. And the examples from the Sunnah are many. The women had halaqat, specific sisters only halaqat with Rasulullah ﷺ to discuss sisters' matters. But they had every right to belong in the masjid. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he did accommodate, he made an entrance specific to the sisters during his time, so they could come to the masjid. Tamam? That did not mean they couldn't go to other entrances. Sometimes they did. But that was an entrance for the sisters who had that modesty and did not want to interact or be in that vulnerable position. So once she has the hijab on, she has every right to engage in the public sphere as much as you do, which means everything within the public sphere. The Muslim women around the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they went to the market, they traded, they bought, they purchased, tamam, and they actively participated in his halaqat. They asked questions. We have an example where the woman asked Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, the men get this and this and this, what should we get? Ya Rasulullah, explain what this ayah means. Ya Rasulullah, can you clarify on this? We have an example, and this is an important one, where a sister, listen to this carefully, a sister during Hajj, she comes to ask Rasulullah ﷺ a question. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's own family member, one of the nephews or one of the cousins, like of Ali ibn Abi Talib, so the sibling of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he comes and he's with the Prophet ﷺ in the best of times in Hajj, in the best of companionships with Rasulullah ﷺ, at the best of times. This is the season of Hajj, in the best of places, Mecca. And as this lady is asking a question, and she's young, and they're of the same age, his eyes are gravitating towards her. So he's looking in her direction. The young person is looking at the direction of the female. The young man is looking in the direction of the female. She happens to be given a share of beauty from his perspective. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ turns his face away, turns the man's face away. Gently, he puts his hand on the cheek and he pushes him away. He does this once, and then of course the conversation continues and the guy looks again. So he does it again twice. The conversation continues and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ noticed that he's looking, so he does it a third time. And then after the third time, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he commented, I did not want fitna to be sparked between them, and I didn't want to give room for shaitan. So that's why I asked him to look away. What's interesting, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not shame the girl. He didn't say, you look too beautiful, this is your fault, you should be wearing niqab, right? And some people will say, well, obviously you can't cover your face in Hajj, that's why she didn't have her face covered. But we have many other examples where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, of course there's a difference of opinion, and those who accept that the niqab is a fard, the face covering, I respect that. But the majority of the ummah did not accept the niqab being a fard. So they accept it as a fadl, but not a fard. Something you do out of grace and honor, and increases you in honor, but it's not necessarily an obligation. With respect, of course, given to those who choose to wear the niqab. And those who accept that it's a fard and have their evidences, I respect that, and I respect the evidences that they use. But that's not to deny the lived experience of the Muslims and the heritage and the consensus of the scholars across the four madhahib that it's not a fard. So he didn't tell the girl to, get out of here, khalas. He didn't tell her to change the way that she looks. He didn't say any of that because there was nothing to say. She was just existing. So what does this mean? This is very important because just purely existing can be a fitna for somebody. Does that mean I'm going to shut the door for my sister and not give her a voice and not allow her to belong? And does that mean I'm going to ask her to live up to my standards as a male, and I'm the one that gets to decide how she looks and how she behaves? Right? And when you open that door, there's no end. You can say that her presence is a fitna. And there are companions who did that, by the way. Ibn Umar's son, he told his wife, I don't want you to go outside. I'm not comfortable with you leaving the house. It's too much fitna out there. So when she wanted to respect her husband's permission, but look, the Prophet ﷺ didn't say that. He said the sister can go. He said, don't prevent your women from going to the masjid. And as long as you have an agreed upon contract, don't prevent them from going to any other place where they're going to be respecting the boundaries of the Quran and the Sunnah. But Ibn Umar himself, when he heard that his son is preventing his wife from doing so, Ibn Umar says, I will not have a relationship with my son. I will not have a relationship with you if you prevent your wife from going to the masjid, because you'll be breaking the command of Rasulullah ﷺ. So I don't care what you think. I don't care what you feel. I don't care how you feel. This is Ibn Umar saying to his son. When I tell you Rasulullah said this and this, and you have an opinion against that, with all due respect, take your opinion and smack it against the wall. This is a son being told, Ibn Umar, he used to love Rasulullah ﷺ so much that he used to basically copy exactly what the Prophet ﷺ did. So there's no one more cautious of the Sunnah than Ibn Umar. He went the extra mile saying the Prophet ﷺ used to eat this way, I'll eat this way. The Prophet ﷺ sat this way, I will sit this way. Even though that's not necessary for us to do. You don't get rewarded for sitting in the way that the Prophet ﷺ did. You don't get rewarded outside of ibadah. These are, natural instinctive things, social things, characteristics. He wanted to copy the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in everything. And he told his son, don't prevent your wife from going to the masjid. And if you do, I don't want to have a relationship with you, because then you'll be breaking the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that goes to show that men can be overprotected. And sometimes it could be a result of, I'm not saying this is the case for Ibn Umar or his family, sometimes it could be the result of insecurity. There are lots of other things. And we put all those feelings aside when it comes to the Quran and the Sunnah. And the Quran and the Sunnah are clear. When the sister puts her hijab on, she has every right to belong in the public sphere. But at the same time, having said that, there are criteria. So what are those criteria then? And that's where the fine details are hammered out. What are those criteria? Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٌ. And don't use a very soft tone. Like when you really lower your pitch, that it sounds seductive. This guys can do and girls can do. That pitch. So the Quran says don't do that in the conversation, as an example. Right? The hadith says when a man and a woman are alone, shaitan is the third. And this actually is the hadith that the scholars of fiqh use to basically discuss what khalwa is. Now it's important to talk about, I'll come back to khalwa in a second. What does it actually look like from a law point of view and from a practical point of view? So don't be alone. Don't use a soft tone that is seductive. The third is don't speak unnecessarily. Like don't babble on and on about things that are not purposeful. So the conversation should be purposeful. It should be concise. And it should be public. It should not be in a private area. And it should be limited in a sense. And that's where the PPL comes from. Public, purposeful, and limited. And some add, concise besides limited. So those are the boundaries. Now, khalwa, what's interesting here to note is that sometimes you have a legal definition of something, but then the scholars go extra in adding extra layers of protection. When was the last time you heard a khutbah about eating pork? Don't eat. Have you ever seen a sheikh yelling from the minbar, don't eat pork, pork is haram? Here are the... Because we are disgusted. As Muslims, you will see the guy, he will drink, he will be with 2 girls at the nightclub. But when it comes to drinking or eating pork, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, la hawla. Like a guy and a girl will be out on a date. And when it's time to order, be like, excuse me, is your meat halal? Like, is it hand slaughtered? Subhanallah. Culturally, it's not a fitna for us. So that's why scholars don't discuss it much, and we don't hear lots of extra layers added. Like, we don't ever hear a sheikh saying, and don't go to this restaurant, and don't come close to pork, and be really careful. Don't look at the picture of a pig. Don't look at the picture of the swine. We don't like, because why? Because it's not a fitna for most people. Whereas khalwa, legally, when the scholars talked about the definition of khalwa from a fiqh point of view, they actually said a place where a man and a woman are alone and can commit the act of zina in that space. So some of them said that if they're alone at a restaurant and there are lots of people sitting, that's not khalwa. There's no way they're going to be able to commit zina in a Tim Hortons, coffee plate. Like, there's no way. It's not going to happen. Right? And I know some of this stuff, I know it can be sensitive, but let's be as clear as possible and respectful. Up to date with Muslim memes. Allah al-Musta'an. Okay, inshallah. I'm looking at the comments. If you have any, please, no problem. But, and by the way, these are not memes, guys. I see this. I see this on a day-to-day interaction with the community. You see this this is real. Like, the memes capture the reality of the ummah. Now, the scholars, they really, when you see the way Muslims react to khalwa, the scholars place more protections than necessary sometimes. Why? Because a lot of people fall into it. Let me give you the typical case. The typical case. Or maybe less typical. I'll give you less typical, because typical case, half of you will think I'm talking about someone that you know, and then that will be not good. Okay? The common but still a little bit uncommon case. Here's what happens. Guy who's really religious. Okay, this I hope this resonates. Guy who's very religious leaves Canada, leaves the States to go study medicine outside. Where did he get medicine? Where did he get admission if he couldn't get into the North American context? Caribbean, or one of the East European countries, Poland, Russia, right? Caribbean, Poland, Russia, Denmark. Sometimes you'll hear Ireland has a good, Cyprus has a good med school system. Those countries are very, very popular tourist attractions. What do tourists do when they're away from their home? They like to discover themselves, and they like to party, and they like to get drunk and whatnot. We know this. This is a reality. So this Muslim guy who leaves everything here to go study medicine, his parents are thinking, MashaAllah, my son is busy doing medicine, I'm doing dua, and they fuel. Every single person that has money in that family sends their money. Abdullah, you are, MashaAllah, the hero of this ummah. Are you telling us not to go to medical school? Let me finish the story, Hisham. No, go to medical school. Just don't lose yourself. Go anywhere as long as you can keep yourself. Okay? So he goes to Poland, or goes to Russia or Latvia or Lucia, any of those, St. George, any of those schools. And at the very beginning, med school is very stressful. Very stressful. Most people do drugs when they're in medicine, and they cope by doing other things. So you cope with the stress, you lose yourself, and then you end up being at a nightclub, you do some haram things, you regret the haram things. So this person feels bad after a year of grades and everything, khalas, life, shaitan, boom, boom, boom. You wake up, you're like, what happened to me? This is not me. This is not the face that my mother raised. La hawla wa quwwata illa billah. So you decide, I'm going to go do tawbah. And when you decide to go do tawbah, you go to the masjid. And when you go to the masjid, what happens in the masjid? MashaAllah, there's another sister who happens to be there to do tawbah. So you meet each other to do tawbah, and then subhanAllah, that's where shaitan does the unfortunate. Oh, because now in your eyes, or in each other's eyes, those two, like MashaAllah, you're a sister, you've come to the masjid to pray, to ask Allah for forgiveness and guidance. I've come to the masjid to ask Allah for forgiveness and guidance. My Muslim sister, my Muslim brother, oh, you are so much better than everything else. You remind me of that. Let's read Quran together. Let's do itikaf together. Let's do, you wake me up for Fajr, I'll wake you up for Fajr. MashaAllah. So, Allahu Akbar. Beautiful, beautiful. And then before you know it, you pick up the phone. Oh no, Sheikh XYZ. Remember the story of Barsisa that I kept hearing when I was like 8 years old? I never thought this would be real, but guess what? I'm in that situation. So because this is such a typical case, yeah, like I'm giving you a very weird example, but it happens. But it's a typical case. It has caused a lot of people to put guards. We as human beings, we tend to underestimate our weaknesses and we overestimate our strengths. And so what shuyukh do is they add to the legal definitions of khalwa and they say, be careful, don't be alone. Don't be alone at all. Be as clear as possible. Avoid the fitna, avoid. And out of fear of Allah and love of Allah, sometimes people can become more aggressive. And especially the people who fell into it. They become very defensive and they never want to fall into it again. So they add extra layers. But by adding extra layers on them, instead of adding those extra layers to themselves and being compassionate in the advice, they can sometimes cause more damage and push people away by being extra aggressive with others. And that's why Imam Shafi'i said, he said, be very critical with yourself. The level of Islam that you want to practice, I will never get in the way of you wanting to be more committed to Islam. I have no right to get in your way. You want to put a niqab, you want to put those extra barriers, you want to lower your gaze, you want to look the other way, you want to have no friends at all who are female or the opposite gender on Facebook, Instagram, any of that, Twitter. I will respect that and I will make dua for you. But don't expect others to be at that same level, and don't expect or don't judge others based on your own situation, your circumstances, and your weaknesses. Everybody's tested differently. So my test might be with gender interaction. My test may be with women, and some sister, her test might be with men. But that doesn't mean it's the only test. Some people are tested with wealth, money, power, fame. Some people are tested with attention. Some people love to be seen and some people like to see, right? Some people like to be heard and some people like to hear. And everybody's tested different, and shaitan will tempt you at different phases in your life in different areas. And guess what? People change as they develop. So guess what? When we're young and when we have all that zeal, the fitna of the opposite gender is very, very, like it's real. But as you age, as you get older, as you get more mature, as you're married, as you get fulfilled in those aspects, not always. Sometimes people get more, more hungry or thirsty for lust after marriage. Let's be explicit. But in most cases, it slows down. And that's why when you ask a sheikh who's younger in their life, what do you advise in gender interactions, they will be very, 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 very explicit and harsher and clearer. Whereas if you ask someone who's 7 years, like, yeah, take it easy, man. Make it easy for these young people. Why you gotta make some... Man, these are little kids. Let them do their MSA stuff. That's just okay. Don't make such a big deal. Right? So you have to understand that the person that you're asking fatwa from at that phase in their life, and I'm sure you've done that. You go to like different shuyukh, depending on their experience, depending on their age, they will give you a different answer. But guess who knows you better than you know, and better than anybody else does? You know yourself better than anybody else. You know your situation, you know your limitations, you know your strength, you know your weaknesses. So don't put yourself in a vulnerable position with anybody. And don't give your heart to anybody that does not have that love or respect or fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it'll be a vulnerable position and you'll be left in a vulnerable position. And that's what shaitan likes to do. Shaitan likes to pick and poke at us to get that, to exploit the weakness within, to exploit the vulnerability points. Because when shaitan gets you vulnerable, it diminishes you, diminishes your confidence, it diminishes your belief in yourself. Have you ever seen somebody, subhanAllah, you see this when people are young and they're committed and they have zeal towards Allah and love for Allah. They're determined, they have all this motivation. But when they slip and they fall and they break, that can lead them to being more humble, but it can also lead them to being less confident. I don't trust my own opinion anymore because I've been wrong once. I've been wrong twice. And when shaitan continues to drag you into those holes to show you your vulnerability and your weakness, shaitan will eventually use that against you. Be like, well, how can you trust yourself? How can you trust anything anymore? How can you trust anybody else? How can you trust Allah? That's the escalation points, yeah? And that's what the shaitan's strategies to get us to basically expose that vulnerability. And the ayat in the Quran are many. يريد الشيطان ويريد الشيطان أن تضلوا ضلالا بعيدا. Shaitan wishes for you to be misguided far, far, far away. يريد الله أن يخفف عنكم ويريد الذين يتبعون الشهوات أن تميلوا ميلا عظيما. Allah wills to uplift, to keep you light. Allah has put all these regulations so you don't have to carry burdens and doubt and confusion and vulnerability. But shaitan will want to basically move us far, far away and get us to deviate as far as possible, which actually adds weight and emotional burden and guilt and volatility. And we know what that looks like very, very well. So let's come back. And I know I've taken longer than I intended to, and inshallah I'll get through the questions. Sister Sarah's like, we're behind time, but inshallah khair, I hope it's going to be beneficial. But nonetheless, one thing that is important is there's evidence for each one of those things that we said: public, purposeful, and limited. Let's go to the public. We know the khalwa. Purposeful, please take your time. This is beneficial. Jazakumullah khair. I appreciate that. May Allah bless you, Brother Umar, and everybody else. May Allah bless you and give you Jannah Firdaus. I hope it is beneficial, inshallah. So, where did these come from? Did the fuqaha just come up with this by themselves? No, they did not just come up with this by themselves. Because there's a story, you all heard the story of Aisha radiallahu anha when she was left behind in Banu al-Mustaliq and all that. And when she was left behind, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very smart in always allocating somebody from his army who would actually go and pick up all the leftovers and make sure that everything is cleaned up and protect the army from behind. So somebody from the community would always be a day behind everybody else. And when Aisha was left behind, the story is long, you can read on it. But the shahid, what I want to focus on is the fact that Aisha radiallahu anha is discovered by Safwan. She's all alone. Safwan ibn Mu'attal comes in and he notices her. And Safwan, of course, who do you think the Prophet ﷺ is going to leave behind? Somebody who knows the families, knows the community. So Safwan knows Aisha radiallahu anha from behind, like from before the hijab became a mandate. And when the hijab became a mandate, by the way, the wives of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had to cover their faces, not just their heads. They had to cover their faces. So Aisha, as soon as she saw somebody coming, she covered her face. But Safwan knew it was Aisha radiallahu anha, because you can imagine the clothing style. You can tell who people are, the overall figure. So Safwan was in a very uncomfortable position. He doesn't want to say a word to the wife of the Prophet ﷺ out of respect. Like imagine what a position to be in. So what does he say? فَاسْتَرْجَعَ. The hadith says فَاسْتَرْجَعَ. He says, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. To Allah we belong and to Allah we return. So he is trying to focus on when he said return. And as he says return, he puts the camel down to indicate to Aisha that it's my duty to return you back to the camp, but I'm not going to say any words. We're not going to go beyond what the Quran and the Sunnah or the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he keeps it very, very concise. And then as he leads the camel from the front, he doesn't look behind. He gives it that privacy. And he says, if you wish to stop for any reason, you can tap the camel. The camel will be, will basically, come down. I will remove myself, give you the privacy, and you can tap the camel up again. When the camel's back up, I can disappear for 10, 15 minutes if need be, and then I can come back and carry you to the rest of the way. Even though he did that, even though he behaved in that way, they still accused him. And they accused Aisha, wal-'iyadhu billah, the hypocrites. So it doesn't matter how committed you are. Some people always find something to say. That's number one. So it's not about pleasing people. It's not about what men will say. It's not about what women will say. It's about the fact that in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he did not take advantage of a vulnerable person. And this is to the guys. The guys, I'm speaking to the guys here. Sometimes, and this happens quite a bit. You find somebody who's vulnerable, and they're looking to discover themselves, they're looking to discover and be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you take advantage of that vulnerability and weakness. And guys know exactly what that looks like. False promises, exaggerated statements. When I was 14, I played in Barcelona and I was the captain of, mittaqillah, you can't even, you get the idea. So don't take advantage of people in a vulnerable position. And what's interesting is Safwan kept the words very limited and didn't say much beyond that. That becomes an example. Listen to this carefully. That becomes an example of the best practices. And in Islam, we have best practices. But then we have reality that dictates necessities, which get us in a position where we have to come up with rules that actually work. Women entering the workforce, there's a lot that can be said about the economically. Like, who stands to gain by women entering the workforce? Because Muslim women have always been, given the opportunity. You have the freedom to do so, to work, to keep your own money. Your husband provides for you, so you do it out of fulfillment and service, not out of necessity. But I know sometimes with the current economic reality, double incomes are necessary, and I know all of that. So reality sometimes makes it difficult. The workforce, there's a lot of realities that, that dictate practically new necessities and new reframings of the Sharia. So I can't sit there and tell people, listen, we need to enforce the best practices. And when you see a sister, keep it like, don't say a word, don't say anything beyond that. Just move on, because guess what? That actually goes against the essence of respect. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. But at the same time, not the extra extreme where there are giggles and laughter and cute notes and this and that and lulls. And there's a balance in between. And every one of us has to be cautious and remember that we come from different backgrounds. So we're comfortable with different things. But our comfort levels shouldn't dictate upon the Quran and the Sunnah. It should be the other way around. So we go back to the Quran and the Sunnah, and we see the window that is acceptable within the Quran and the Sunnah, and we go back to that. So practically, that's let's say this is a conceptual, abstract introduction. Now let's go back and ask these questions, inshallah, very quickly and answer them together, because they will map out specifically. The first question: is it permissible to have friends that are of the opposite gender? And is it allowed to have the opposite gender on our social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook? Look, I have never said this. I have never used a statement about a sister, like, this is my friend. I would not say that. Who's not from the same gender. I would not say that. I would say, this is my colleague. This is my respected sister. This is someone that I work with. This is and I would say the position of the person. This is the president of the MSA. This is, right? But I would not say this is my friend. I would say this is my colleague. This is my sister. And I think this is very respectful. And I think this is closer to the Sunnah. Right? This is closer to the Sunnah. Can they be friends? Like, we can have cordial relationships. Like, we can have AssalamuAlaikum, how are you? We can have respect. Hey, we need to coexist. We need to work together. The ummah is dying. We need to have relationships, but they're professional, public, concise, and purposeful. Right? Tamam? Yeah. Yes, of course, you can ask questions towards the end, inshallah. I'm receiving some questions now. Inshallah, I will just send all the questions and I will address them, inshallah. I'll just go through all these questions first, and then the rest of the questions we'll take, inshallah. And is it okay to have friends on, people of the opposite gender on social media, Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook? Oh, you mean you want to read the questions? Yes, you can read the questions and I can answer them. Yeah, go ahead if you want to do that, Murad.
Okay, inshallah. Yeah, sorry, Sheikh. So only because some of the questions we kept some things out because we wanted to imply they gave some scenarios. You just want to give an example with each question because we have some more information about them.
Sure.
So Sister Sada, inshallah, you can continue from number 3 then, inshallah.
All right, for sure, inshallah. Is it number 3 or number 4? Just to clarify.
Yeah, sorry, Sheikh, which question were you answering, sorry?
Actually, I didn't answer any of the questions yet. I'm just on number 1.
Okay, inshallah. All right, so number 1 onwards then, inshallah.
But if I have addressed something, you can take it out and just focus on the things that I did not address.
Yeah, inshallah. All right, so yeah, you can continue answering the first one then, inshallah.
So the first one, regarding social media, Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook. Look, this is taqdiri. Taqdiri means it depends. It's not the form. It's what happens within the form. Like, I know people can have friends on Facebook who are not of the same gender, but hey, it's just public messages, respectful messages. You know, there's no sliding into the DMs. There's no wink. There's no, hey, how you doing? There's no ulterior motives. None of that. Tamam? None of that. So Snapchat, I don't know. It's more personal, more private. I would be a little bit skeptical. You know, Instagram potentially, but not necessarily. I don't think so. Facebook, it's a bit more like open, right? So it depends. Again, it's about the interaction. Not necessarily who you have and whatnot, in terms of friendship. But I personally have always done my best in my own, experience to basically not add sisters on, Instagram. I don't think I have followed, any sisters on Instagram except like public profiles, public, friends, family, just out of respect and out of caution. But that doesn't, like, once in a while, like I listen to sisters' perspectives, and I think they're very important and beneficial. But just out of respect, that's kind of like been my position. But I'm not going to enforce that upon anybody. As long as, again, you're respecting the rules. We said public, purposeful, and limited, PPL. And who determines what is considered purposeful? Like, that differs from profession to profession. If someone is doing freelance and needs to generally network and connect with people in the community, or someone whose work, mathalan, in public speaking and relationship building is halal, guys. It's halal, right? As long as you're not delving, you're keeping it purposeful, on topic. Assalamualaikum, sister, just saw this, would like to, like, for example, the typical idea of taking notes from somebody. Going to a sister, like, I saw your notes, they look great. Can I have a copy? I've had to do that. I've actually had to do that once, many times. Even recently, there's a sister who's studying with us at Azhar. I saw her notes. I was like, MashaAllah, your brain is so clear. Like, she took the notes and they were so perfect. It was nothing else. Like, quick message, Assalamualaikum, can I please have access to the notes? May Allah bless you and give you Jannah Firdaus. Straight to the point. She sent the notes and that was it. But of course, for many other people, right? The notes situations, like, hey, mashallah, you get the notes like, hey, oh, those notes, look at that brain of yours. Like, how do you do that? How do you take colors? How do you choose this? How do you choose that? Like, MashaAllah. And then you end up like, and then it becomes a slippery slope from there. So it's about respecting the boundaries. I'm not saying more than what's necessary. So for example, seeing her notes, I just made dua. Like, you frame it, you frame the compliment in a dua. May Allah bless you for taking such great notes. Jazakumullah khairan. That's it. Not like I saw the notes and the ink drops reminded me of this and that. Let me tell you about my grandmother. She used to take great notes. MashaAllah, let me send you my notes on a course I took on marriage, and hint, hint, wink, wink. Like, come on. That's where the problem happens. So be respectful, right? Don't play games. And this comes down, inshallah, in questions later. Continue, inshallah.
Right, Jazakallah, Sheikh. The next question is, how formal must we be with our interaction with the opposite gender? So what's the limit? How formal must we be? When we're texting, can we use certain emojis? Can you say LOL? Is that permissible? Let's say somebody makes a joke, in a gathering or through Zoom. Can you laugh at it? Can you smile? So how do we make sure our friendliness is not taken the wrong way by the opposite gender? Like, what's the limit?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Like, there's no hadith that says don't say LOL. Like, it's one of those things that you have to contextualize, right? There are certain emojis which you obviously shouldn't post or do, and like in between that, there are personal and comfort levels. if, for example, you have a very good working relationship with somebody, and you have no reason to worry or any reason to basically, yani, assume otherwise, tamam. I think it's fine to like use like a smiley face once in a while, like once in a while. I personally don't. In my interaction with sisters, I avoid any emoticons. Like I avoid any. I don't use LOL or anything like that in regular chats. I just don't think it's professional. I try to keep all my interactions professional. But I'm saying if you're gonna do it once in a while, a smile is okay, tamam. Especially if somebody's going through a hard time or like you don't need to. That's fine. That's fine. Exclamation marks are fine as well. Tamam. Exclamation marks are fine. It depends on what you're saying, right? And keep it like concise. Yani one is fine, 10 is not. Yani 10 might be problematic, right? So use your own intuition. And remember, like sometimes it's also about being consistent. And here's my worry, right? Like if I am extra, listen, if I'm extra cautious with one or two people, and everybody else I'm smiling and this and that, what happens to those one or two people? What message am I sending to them? So whatever you choose, you have to actually be consistent throughout. So it's known, Sarah is like this with everybody. Haidar is like this with everybody. Tamam? I would avoid hearts in the general chat, but it depends on the context. Like Jannah's awesome, heart. Yani you're in a public chat and like, mashallah, brotherhood, Man United, heart, Muhammad Salah, heart. Like, yani it depends on the context, yeah? But, you know, our MSA president, heart, yani, and if she's a yani, you know what I mean? Like, so look, it's better to err on the side of caution. That's my rule. But keep it concise, keep it lighthearted, guys. Just because you're not posting heart doesn't mean you have a terrible relationship with the opposite gender. Like you should make others feel comfortable in your presence. You should make others feel, secure, not vulnerable, not intimidated, not like, a'udhu billah, like rays of judgment are coming out of your eyes and you're making people feel uncomfortable. No, people should feel comfortable around religious people. They should feel comfortable around you. They should feel comfortable enough to open up their hearts to you. They should feel comfortable to ask questions. But that should all happen. And discussions are good. Discussions among sisters and brothers, like sitting down in an open forum where everybody's voicing their opinion and having those respectful conversations. That's fine. But the problem is, unfortunately, in younger circles, there are a lot of emotions that get, that occupy people and distract people. So I tell everybody, if you see emotions are developing, there are two solutions. You completely like run away and turn those off and control them and do whatever you need to make sure they're controlled, or get married. And get married means you don't like message her privately and be like, 3 years from now we'll get married. But in the meantime, let's build a solid foundation so that we can tell our parents. Like if you're ready, you knock on the front door. If you're not, don't leave her hanging. Get yourself prepared. Don't leave him hanging either. Don't make false promises. You're ready, knock on the front door. Be a man, be a woman. Knock on the front door. Send a message through a friend. Send a message through a sheikh, whatever it is, and get married. And guess what? MSAs that have marriages actually sometimes make the MSA stronger. I'm not saying make political marriages in the MSA. Like Ryerson MSA will marry into McMaster's MSA and UFT, UTM, so we can create a network of any. Although that did happen historically, and that's how very successful institutions were built, including the Prophet Muhammad's community. Exchanging numbers for MSA, I think again, it's fine as long as it's in a group, as long as it's a group chat. Oh, Hisham, as long as it's in a group chat. So avoid the khalwa as much as possible, unless it's a direct question that's very public, straight to the point. And if, for example, I don't need to create a group chat to say, this is Sarah, the event is happening tomorrow, just wanted to confirm what time, 6 p.m. Khalas, that's it, end of discussion. Tamam? But if it's like, if it's a big discussion that's going to require a lot of back and forth, it's better. It's safer in that case to do what? To do like a group chat with the 3 of you or 4 of you or 5 of you, so that it's not khalwa. And by the way, khalwa can be virtual. Khalwa can be on social media. in the way that we define it, given the rise of issues and vulnerabilities. Go ahead, inshallah.
Inshallah, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for the answer. So then our next question is more so, we talked about like these situations that we should avoid and such. What should we do if we're in like a work or school setting and like someone is trying to make small talk or trying to engage in a casual conversation? Like, is it appropriate to like entertain this by even just smiling a little bit or laughing? Or how do we not come off as rude without crossing it, but also making sure we don't cross any lines, like in person and online as well?
Yeah, like typically, I think to end an uncomfortable conversation respectfully, there are tricks that you could use respectfully. So like making a dua has always worked for me. Like you're having a conversation, just yani may Allah bless you, Jazakumullah khair, may Allah give you Jannat Firdaus. And I'm not saying that when I do that, I'm ending a conversation, but I'm saying like, sometimes it could be something like that. So whatever works for you. And sisters and brothers are smart enough to know how to end conversations. Like I'm not going to give you like, that. And if you don't talk to each other, I'm sure you can come up with some. Yeah, if it's a non-Muslim and you can't give dua, like respectfully. But if it's in the middle of a lecture, wear a ring on your finger. It stops the situation from happening in the first place. That's true. If you're give da'wah, they'll run. Well, you don't want them to run. Yeah, may Allah guide you. Oh, if someone wants to hug me, okay, great. Yeah. Well, that's that's great. So there's a lot here. So, like end it respectfully. And guys, like we do this. Like I still attend, graduate school. Like I'm interacting with Muslims and non-Muslims and people of no faiths, and so it's these are real things that happen to all of us. Usually the hugging, like usually you can put your hand on your chest and say, I send you warm greetings from my heart. And you can, do that in interviews and whatnot. But sometimes it's very difficult. Like I've been hugged before. Almost every sheikh has been hugged before. Especially with older, like if a 75-year-old woman is going to come to you like, Ma, how are you? This was a great discussion. It's difficult sometimes. Like that was the situation that happened. And it happens to us. So I would say do your best. But when something is out of your control and happens spontaneously and you don't have the, it's okay. It's okay for these. And may Allah forgive us for any unintended slip-ups. And the Quran is there to tell us that Allah forgives those. But if you can preemptively plan, you will have almost no issues. Like in interviews, let them know in advance. My comfortable spaces are I would send you greetings from my heart. I don't shake hands. Whatever it is whatever you are comfortable with and accepting as the norm, just communicate that with people. And most of the time, they're very accommodating and respectful in interviews and whatnot. If you do feel like, and this is where it's a slippery slope. If you do feel like you could be misjudged or misunderstood, or you may be denied opportunities, med school interviews and whatnot, and you don't want to be judged, again, especially in this context, you have the rukhsa, the Maliki opinion, and this is where Islam's fluidity is important. The Maliki opinion is like members of the opposite gender can touch as long as that touch is not coupled by lust. That's the Maliki opinion. The other three say better to avoid. The Hanbalis are the most strict, and Hanafis as well. The Shafi'is have differences in terms of like wudu implications and whatnot, and they're more strict in that way, even with your own wife. But besides that, you could take the Maliki opinion. It's fine, but just don't misuse it. You understand what I'm saying? Don't misuse it. And don't let that be the slippery slope. So our deen is very flexible. Our tradition is very flexible. Our tradition is very rich. But you should be committed and you should be consistent. That's the key. Committed to whatever it is that you're committed to and consistent with. Tamam? Just say it's dangerous to hug and shake hands with COVID right now. Actually, yeah. This COVID has changed reality. Everybody's in niqabi now. And there are no safety fears. Subhanallah. Everybody does, like greetings from their heart. And guess what? Society functions. Which shows you how much of this, like people were saying, the business world would collapse if people are not shaking hands. It's about the social norms, guys. If everybody's doing it, guess what? It becomes the new norm. And that's why it's important in Islam to practice in a congregation. because there's a social aspect, the social norms aspect cannot be denied. If you're alone in a sea of opposition, it's very difficult. Only like people who are very determined, but they see you handshake the same gender person after. You can be consistent, right? Right. Can we continue the questions, inshallah?
Yeah, Sheikh, just a follow-up from that question. What about people in professions like paramedics, doctors, nurses, or, you have to have those patient interactions with either non-Muslims or Muslims and the opposite gender, and you
Yeah.
I know you spoke about softer tone. So in cases like that, is there more of a leniency, or is it pretty much similar?
Yeah, so anything within a professional daruri aspect, necessity, the necessity of the job. So like a nurse providing care, she's allowed to provide care for like somebody of the opposite gender. She's allowed to do, it's because it's the mandate, it's the job, and she's providing a service. And that service usually is within an institution that is very, very, very well equipped with handling misuse of power and manipulation and whatnot. And there are already safeguards in place. So those are completely fine. Like in nurses, doctors, paramedics, even in necessities, like a police officer has to make like an arrest, and it's immediate, things like that. Of course, it's fine. And Umar asked, what about the hadith about an iron needle being better to be gone through the head rather than the shake hand of the opposite gender? Yes. Guess what? Imam Malik. Who's Imam Malik, guys? Who are the Malikis? The Malikis are Ahl al-Madinah. They are the people of Medina. They are the closest to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of practice, in terms of love. Imam Malik used to take his shoes off when he entered Medina out of respect. He used to get off of the horse when he would enter Medina. He says, I would not be able to like touch this ground with a horse's hooves, because out of respect for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they understood the hadith Umar to be talking about the touch here. It's about what does that mean, to touch or to shake, like to touch the hand of an opposite gender. They meant basically even the hand, even a lustful touch of the hand, I'd rather be struck with than that. So they understood the touch to be a lustful touch, right? And then of course they have like lots of ahadith and sometimes historical examples of, and there's lots of questions about that. Like when some women came to give bay'ah to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that sometimes they gave bay'ah. There's questions about that. There's a lot of discussions, yeah. But the general understanding within the Malikis is that it's about a lustful touch. So anytime they hear the word touch, it's like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لَامَسْتُمْ النِّسَاء, when you touch women, then you have to basically make your like you have to basically clear yourself from a state of janaba. So what does that mean? Like actually touch, or like touch here as in like, oh, become intimate with. And then that's how you get the different rulings for what you need to do. And Imam Shafi'i, the Shafi'is were the most I believe they're the most strict. That even if, that's why as a Shafi'i it's difficult to basically do tawaf around the Kaaba with your wife, because if you touch her, khalas, that's it, your wudu's gone. They understood it to be like touch with anybody, even your mahram. So yeah. Good. Tamam. So that's the understanding. Tamam. And for ولا يدخل عليها رجل إلا ومعها محرم, this is talking about like there's lots of, remember guys, context here. So some have understood this to be a man should not enter a private space where a woman is in her private sphere, except if there is a mahram being present. So lots of these, again, the hadith and how the madhahib approach them, they're understanding them within like specific paradigms. So hopefully, exactly. In terms of not handshaking as a male, I shouldn't handshake other men either. What did you mean? Be consistent in this regard. I generally try not to touch women, but in the same setting, I will shake the hand of a male. Yeah. Like being consistent means like, you're not going to say, I will not shake hands with like these two sisters because they're really attractive, but every other sister, they're kind of like, okay. That's a problem, because then, it has, so that's what consistency means. Like if you're going to say, I'm not going to shake hands with, any sisters, khalas, keep it consistent. because then people get confused. You shake hand with like a senior, a 65-year-old woman, then other women like what like why, right? Unless you're socially gifted at like making people feel comfortable, and you're quick on your feet and you're quick to get things like resolved. Like you're shaking like you accepted the shaking of like a 75-year-old woman because you took that opinion and there is an opinion. And then when a younger person like, well, I thought you don't shake hands with women. Like, well, actually, in my tradition, if somebody is very senior and whatnot, like out of respect, I would. And when there's like, you could, as long as you're able to explain it quickly. But if you're going to cause offense, you're going to cause more problems, it's better to just be consistent. That's what I mean by, being consistent. Tamam? For the virtual work environment, I'm receiving onboarding training and have meetings with female colleges one-on-one. The purpose there is limited, but does this go against no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Because this is, again, part of the work. You're there to get something done, and it's part of the work, and that's fine. As long as you remain respectful and professional within that context. Tamam? Can a male surgeon operate on a woman? Yes, why not? Of course, you can operate on a woman. But again, as long as you are like respectful and you're maintaining the professional and the Islamic requirements, and then for those specific situations, whatever profession you choose, you have to learn the Islamic implications associated with that profession. Tamam? Inshallah, keep the questions till the end of the formal Q&A. Tamam. How would I use the Zohar approach in that?
So really quickly, Sheikh. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna make a note of this question to address too later. This somebody just asked, so I'll just copy.
Yeah, it's actually related to our next question, actually. Alhamdulillah. I think some people have been asking this question. So I'm going to combine two of them. So when it comes to the context of marriage, and I want to clarify that this question came from the audience, I believe, or it's the Q&A. How do we get to know someone well enough that we are sure that we want to marry them without crossing gender boundaries in the process? Because we can't date or spend years like the non-Muslims to get to know each other. And if we do find someone that we're interested in, are we allowed to approach them at an event or in any setting directly? And if it's not permissible, what's the best way to go about it then?
Yeah. So you're allowed to collect information about the person to help you make that decision, but it has to remain basically public, has to remain distant, and you cannot interact physically. And the minute that you have fear of that, you need to shut it down and abort mission, get married, find another way. So meaning practically, the best way to do it honestly is if you find somebody that you're interested in, ask about them, collect enough information, and send a proposal. Send a proposal, keep it concise, keep it purposeful as much as possible. Ahmed, I know that you know Abdullah. Abdullah is married to Sister Battiha. Sister Battiha knows Sister Shammama. I'm interested in Sister Shammama. Can you please ask if she's interested? If she's interested, let me know, and then let me know what she's looking for. And yeah, if she is available and she's okay with X, Y, Z, I would like for you to basically formally, yeah. I would like to formally basically, so something like that. Congratulations, brother. There's so much going on here in the chat, guys. I'm going to leave it up to you, Murad, to basically just keep track of the questions as they come in. So that's the best way to do it. Sometimes it's necessary to approach directly. What if you don't know anybody, right? But guys, I have approaching directly from my own limited anecdotal experience when I see in the community, it usually doesn't work out. Like rarely. I'm not saying it doesn't all the time. I'm saying rarely does it work out. Because it's a bit weird. Most people don't have the maturity required to handle a direct proposal. Most people don't. They get gassed up. They're like, whoa, and then they feel like, and then it puts you in a weird situation. If they have to say directly no to you, it's like, it's such an awkward mess. And that's why most people avoid that confrontation. What they do instead, they play this game of well, I want to send him mixed messages and I want to send him a hint, but not directly. And then, that could be a slippery slope potentially. It doesn't have to always be. So that's where you have to basically monitor. I'm okay, this is getting way out of line. This is getting a bit weird here. It's becoming a bit too much. There's flirtation happening. I'm you know, I'm twirling my hair in his presence, I'm making unnecessary eye contact, and like, you know, and have I sent the message clearly? Have I not sent the message clearly? Does he get it? Does he not get it? Why doesn't he notice me? And like, you know, you're with the flower, does he love me? Does he not love me? Does he love me? Does he not love me? Does he love me? Does he not love? Like, if you that level, like, no, you've done messed up. Stop. Right? So you don't want to become too emotionally attached to an idea. That's where your logic has to come in. Like, okay, there's definitely good in this brother. There's definitely good in this sister. Yeah, sorry, sister. I mean, of course, not twirling your hair, twirling your hijab. Oh, my Lord. Ya Allah. It's late at night, man. 8:41. Khair.
We can move on, inshallah, to the next question.
Yeah,
then.
let's move on. This is the flower thing bid'ah.
All right, so kind of on this topic, but not literally. I know previously you mentioned about appreciating and complimenting through dua. So basically, are we allowed to compliment or appreciate the opposite gender? If so, what are we allowed to compliment them on? So let's say, you know, a brother or vice versa, and you know, they have a new outfit. Some people might verbalize that, oh, like nice outfit, etc. Or can you compliment them on their work ethic? So what is sort of like the boundaries and the limits? And then I guess I could kind of ask, like, are we allowed to say salam to one another? So kind of just combine these both.
Yeah. That's good. So, Murad, make some notes of the questions that are even sideline questions. We can come back to them at the end if we have time. I have the energy. I have nothing booked for the evening, so I'm here until you guys are tired and exhausted, inshallah. Whoever wants to stay behind, I'm more than happy to help, inshallah, and be involved. May Allah accept, ya Rabbi. Ameen. So, the question of compliments. Look, the Quran is clear in saying, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا, and say good to all of humans. Say good to everybody. Speak good. Speak well. Speak kindly to everybody. Perfect. Excellent. So, but what does that mean? Look, you know, the scholars actually say that it's haram. Many of the Hanbali scholars say it's haram. Listen to this carefully. It's haram to make a comment which can trigger somebody emotionally that you know for sure you can never marry. It's haram to trigger someone emotionally that you know for sure you cannot marry. What does that mean? Let me give you a practical example of what they would say. They say, for example, the typical example is they say like a guy has 4 wives already, and he goes down the street and is like, sister, nice hijab, habibi, you can't get married. You can't do that. It's haram. That's the example the Hanbalis are given because that's the context. Yeah. The example that we give in this context is, I say, for example, you know, your family is definitely almost 100% certain that you cannot marry an Egyptian because they hate Egyptians. I can say Egyptian because I'm Egyptian, right? Then it's probably best to like not even entertain, not even go down that path, right? That's kind of like the discussion. But in addition to that, they would say that some of these questions, you guys, Allah al-Musta'an. Anyway, may Allah bless you. Allah al-Musta'an. So it's better that compliments, okay, first of all, compliments in Islam, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us, do not basically break the back of your brother. When you give compliments, you can break the back of your brother, even as a brother to brother. Because what happens is sometimes we're standing tall and strong and we want to do the best that we can, and compliments, they actually break us. They break our work ethic. They slow us down because you say to somebody, you've done a wonderful job. Oh, okay, I've done a wonderful job. I can slow down. So part of being wise is to know, listen to this carefully. This is part of the Islamic paradigm. To know when your compliment will cause damage to the person's ego and when your compliment is necessary to keep the person going. Let me give you an example with Sister Sarah. Sister Sarah has been working on a project for 10 months. She expected 100 people to show up to the event. Only 2 people showed up. She's in the corner crying. She feels defeated and deflated and like, oh my Lord, what's happening? Is it me? Is it because I can't, like, is it, and then all the questions that people begin to ask. So Ahmed Ammar, he sees her in that position. I'm picking on you, Sister Sarah, because I know you can handle it. Ahmed Ammar sees her in that position. He feels really bad. I know Ahmed, he would feel bad. But I'll tell you what Ahmed would do without even asking Ahmed what he would do. I would tell you most likely what he would do is he would basically go and speak to a bunch of sisters. Be like, Sister Sarah is in a position where she needs some positive affirmation. If there are no sisters involved, he will bring all the brothers together and then write a statement on behalf of the MSA. And then one of the spokespeople will speak on behalf of the MSA. On behalf of the MSA, we just want to say that you've done great work. We really appreciate your work. It's said professionally, respectfully. She has tears now of joy, not tears of sorrow. MashaAllah, such a beautiful, beautiful motion that was done. And you've done your best to safeguard everybody involved. Now, if there's a bad troublemaker, he would misuse that. Vulnerable. Oh no, Sister X, you've done wonderful. You are so this, you're so that. When you said you moved my heart. You have a way. Because in that moment, she might actually appreciate the words, but those words in the future might resonate. I'm not talking about you now. In general, might resonate and might create. And this is our thinking process. I'm like, this is the source code. This is the process that we go through. How do I make sure the person is comfortable and respected and appreciated without putting anybody in a position of vulnerability? Tamam? So that's what I would do. And to answer the question about like clothing and whatnot, yeah, feel free, guys. To ask any questions, I'm just commenting on the chat. So to comment on clothing and hairstyle and this and this and that, I personally wouldn't be comfortable with. I wouldn't say it's haram. I just personally wouldn't be comfortable with it. Tamam? So I wouldn't say, for example, like nice purse, nice, like, why? I don't think it's necessary. And why are we complimenting things that are so shallow? Like, why are we doing that? Why aren't we complimenting work? Why aren't we complimenting achievements and showing risk? Hisham, Allah guide you, right? Tamam. So that's what I would say about that. Inshallah.
All right, inshallah, Sheikh. The next question I'll go with. So I'll add a bit more context to it, so it's more general. But a lot of us in certain cultures as well, we have certain relationships with things like cousins or maybe long family friends or people that necessarily aren't mahram to us. But for example, maybe the gender interactions there, or for whatever reason, more lenient than it should be. In those cases, how should we go about handling those situations, and how should we interact with cousins, especially those that we grew up with, side by side, or family friends, for the same matter?
Yeah, there's a famous story of a sister that I know from like family. She grew up with her cousins, had a great relationship, and then all of a sudden she attended a halaqah and she realized cousins are mahram. She never knew, so she came and she basically gathered all the cousins and she gave them a speech. AssalamuAlaikum MacMSA. I appreciate each and every one of you. The ride was great in terms of our friendship and our great moments, but we are now adults. She was like 10 years old. We're now adults and we're in a position of taklif. Therefore, I can no longer continue this relationship with you, because it might be problematic in the future. Jazakumullah khairan. Please refer to me from this moment on as Sister X. Please do not say the following to me anymore. So she did that. And, there's a question here that came privately. I'm just reading. There's so much, subhanAllah, so much going on in the chat. I'm just going to try to lower my gaze and focus on this here. What was the last comment, guys? It's getting late. What was the last comment, Murad? What were we saying?
On the last question that was asked, or what you were talking about?
The last thing he said was Sister X, something like that.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair, Haida. So yeah, that's the way she did it. She just cold turkey, and then she had a respectful relationship with everybody and continued. Do we have to do that? I don't think so. Like keep it cordial. Keep it cordial with cousins, right? But there are borders that have to be respected, because they are still non-mahram. They're non-mahram, right? They're non-mahram, regardless of what culture dictates, regardless of what's acceptable socially and what's not acceptable, what the societal norms are. At the end of the day, when it comes to this, we have to be cautious. We have to be cautious. And there are hadith that are very clear about being protective with those boundaries. So, like, again, with my cousins, Assalamualaikum, how are you? How's everything? Khalas, keep it like that. And then, beyond that, keep it cordial and respectful. Tamam? So that's my advice there. Sisters are more likely to comment on brothers' clothing. Could you explain to us the psychology of guys and why that may be dangerous? So this is that's a good question. So guys, what if you live with your cousins? Okay, one thing at a time, guys. And whoever has to leave, may Allah bless you, jazakumullah khair, and may Allah give you success on your assignment. So like guys are affected by compliments. It can really affect most guys. And most guys, unfortunately, they misread. Like a sister can just be very kind in just saying something, in passive, like even didn't think much about it. A sister can compliment a guy's hairstyle, meaning nothing by it whatsoever. Completely innocent. That guy might be sleeping that night having dreams about that statement. What does she mean by it? Oh my God, like what exactly about the hairstyle? He will like take a 360, picture, video, and like, I really need to continue this. And and sometimes sisters can be like that as well, right? We as human beings, we like affirmation. We like to be noted. We like to be seen. We like to be recognized. And that's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he warned us against ash-shirk al-khafi, which is the very, very subtle shirk, which is doing things not for Allah, but doing things so that people can see us and notice us. And there are some people say, there are gender differences between who likes to see more and who likes to be seen. Those are, interesting to discuss, but not really relevant here. What is relevant is that you should be careful against that and keep, like I said, keep things, keep compliments respectful and conducive to growth, and not specific about things that are shallow or things that may be misunderstood. Why? Like I don't see it as necessary to compliment somebody's hair or somebody's beard, except Hisham, who did that as a joke a few minutes ago. Allah guide him. Ameen ya Rabbi.
Okay, Sheikh, there's a couple of questions we got through the anonymous Q&A. Also, can you guys that asked questions previously just send it through there, just because we might have missed it. But there's a question, and it says, how come shuyukh here basically allow a woman to work when the vast majority of scholars said that a woman should stay at home and only leave for a legit reason? Also, if she has no need to work, then wouldn't it be impermissible to do things that are normally impermissible? For example, viewing a male aura for a woman is haram. If she has no need to work because her husband is a millionaire, then would it still not be haram for her to take this job because she had no necessity in the first place to see or touch male aura? Yeah, that's a question.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. Firstly, remember when we say shuyukh say it's impermissible for X, Y, Z, we have to operationalize that by saying which shuyukh, at what moment in time, and with what evidence. Because there are shuyukh, for example, in specific contexts, they say that it's better to shut the door of fitna. People are not used to women outside in the public sphere, so therefore it's better that they don't come to the public sphere because they will create X, Y, Z. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I don't think that's necessarily true, and I don't think that goes with the dominant understanding the companions had. If you look at the companions, Khadija radiallahu anha, before the hijab was obligated, she was a businesswoman, and she interacted with people, and she moved around with people. If you look, for example, at Aisha radiallahu anha, she taught education. Here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. Aisha radiallahu anha, she actually learned medicine, and she didn't learn medicine out of necessity. She learned medicine because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sick, and when he was sick, people used to come from different corners to give basically suggestions and as to how to basically treat the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So she developed a talent and a respect for medicine, and she wanted to basically grow. And after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ passed away, she continued to study medicine. And that's why Abdullah ibn Zubayr, when he came and visited her, he told her, Ya al-Mu'mineen, O mother of the believers, I know you to be good at hadith because of your husband, Rasulullah ﷺ, and I know you to be very good at the knowledge of genealogies because Abu Bakr, he was great at that. And I know you to be good at inheritance laws because of this. But why do I see that you're really good at medicine? She says, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sick and I learned medicine to try to heal him. But Allah's will came to be, and then I continued to practice afterwards. Out of wanting to be fulfilled. Can you guys hear the alarm or no? You can? Okay. I hope somebody.
I think it's not that bad, Sheikh. If you can, it's not that bad at all.
Okay, khair, inshallah. It's not a ringtone. That's an alarm. That's a fire alarm or the security alarm in the masjid. Not the fire alarm. It's a security alarm. It's just a motion. Perfect. Okay, khair, inshallah. So, first of all, not all scholars, actually the majority of this, let's not say majority, let's not quantify it. Not all scholars say that it's impermissible for women to work. And work is not necessarily only done out of necessity. She could do so to fulfill herself. Of course, to go into like an area of like medicine where you're working directly with men, like for example, to become like a gynecologist, as a, or maybe not a gynecologist. Yeah, to do something that has to do with men as a female, specifically when it's not a necessity, better to avoid, especially if you're planning in the long term, you're making those career decisions. It's good to make that plan from the beginning. Tamam? Can you guys? Tamam. Yeah, but again, there are scholars who say it is permissible for women to earn out of fulfillment and to keep that wealth for herself, as long as she's not compromising that that like her haya, she's not compromising her modesty, and there are certain things that we as men should not prevent just because. What's the evidence? What's the evidence that she cannot leave the house, right? When we know that there are women around the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ who used to work in the market, who used to sell in the market, who used to basically interact with men in the market. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ go to them and tell them, no, you cannot come, you cannot work here. There's a weak narration, but still it's used by many of the fuqaha when I believe it was in the time of Umar, when he assigned somebody to be in charge of the market ethics, to basically govern the market and to be the police of business, the police of trade. He assigned a female to go and basically be in charge. So why was that? Why was that okay? Right? He could have assigned a male. He could say most businessmen are male. Why assign her? So there are lots of these examples, of females occupying positions, of teaching, occupying positions of trade, occupying positions, in the early Muslim community. And the situations again, even outside, like during the time of Imam Malik rahimahullah, there were women and there were questions that were asked, and the Malikis generally conceptualized that it was okay for women to occupy these positions. But when it comes to basically choosing a specific occupation where you're dealing directly with men's awrat, I would say just out of respect, better to avoid. You've got a point there. So hopefully that clarifies.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. And I just want to signify for everyone, please submit questions to the forum just so we have everything in one place, inshallah. We are going to try our best with the forum if time permits. But if you're a pressing question, you can go ahead and ask, inshallah.
Alaikum. Yes, my question was if there are guys who especially in school or workplace who try to hit on you or try to touch you, how do you deal with that, especially when a male boss or teacher tries to shake your hand?
Oh my Lord. Yeah. SubhanAllah, that's a very terrible disrespect to authority that Allah has given, or responsibility that Allah has given you as a male, as a teacher, as a boss, and that should not be done. And honestly, somebody like that, like, advise privately. But if it continues, and if they're doing that with you as a visible Muslim, like, yani, I have no sympathies towards taking all extreme measures in that case to ensure that that person is dealt with the highest form of justice. Like, you know, like in terms of escalating that to a board of ethics or to a superior to ensure that that is not. And if somebody's doing that with a sister, most likely they're going to be repeat, unfortunately. And in a position like that, with what we've seen as disrespect to authority, and we all are humans, and may Allah forgive all of us. Wallahi, I'm not speaking here, you know, from like a moral like superiority. May Allah forgive all of us. All of us are infinitely flawed, but we have to protect our sisters in the community, and we have to ensure that these things are punished to the max, so that it creates a safe environment for sisters to belong and to work. Because if you know, if this is happening to my sister or to my daughter or to my wife, like, this would enrage and be an act of immense disrespect, and we should not accommodate or tolerate even a touch. I would not tolerate even a finger touch with seduction and like a statement, a flirtatious statement, that should not be tolerated. So give that person, you know, advice privately, you know, like, make it clear, like, no, and if that behavior continues, like, absolutely go to the full extent of whatever is legally acceptable, and whatever set up provost office, get him, you know, whatever it may be.
What about the shaking the hand thing?
So the flirtatious part, yeah, but shaking the hands in what, like, yani, in what way?
For a job interview.
So somebody is demanding that they shake, like making explicit to demand to shake the hand.
Like, because it's like a business gesture, so and it's commonplace here in the West. So, like, how do you go about it, and like not seem like a nasty person?
Yeah. So as I discussed earlier, in the Maliki opinion, it is okay to shake. It's okay to make that physical contact as long as it's not coupled by lust. Okay. So if you're going to accept that to be the opinion that you're going to adopt and you're going to be consistent with, that's fine, especially if it's a necessary part of the job. Like, you're constantly signing business contracts. I personally, again, it's a rukhsa. It is there. It's one of the, you know, established opinions within the madhab. Personally, I myself would not, yani, you know, go down that. I would do my best to be like, you know, use it as a da'wah opportunity. Well, my tradition has, you know, certain limitations or certain guidelines between how men and women react or act or interact. And it's no personal disrespect to you. I respect you as, you know, this and this and that. Or to be preemptive and just to say, I send you warm greetings from my heart, and, you know, have that as basically the alternative to handshaking, right? Others will basically use gloves and whatnot. Yani, you know, this, like, guys, again, I'm giving you all the opinions. I'm giving you all the variations. You have the Malikis who are very flexible and open when it comes to this, and respect. They only understand touching to be lustful touching. That's what's haram. That's what's prohibited. And you have people that are doing things out of wara, out of extra precaution. As long as you can sustain that and be consistent with that, then that should be fine, inshallah.
All right, Sheikh. And everyone else, inshallah, alaikum salam. Everyone, please submit your questions in the form so that if there's repeats, and also we can keep track of them, inshallah. If we miss it, let us put it in the form. We'll try our best to get to it, inshallah.
Yeah. And as you've seen, like, Ishraq says most people will respect if you just explain it. Sister Taima also says, I just put my hand over my heart and nod. Everyone seems to get it. Absolutely. So again, like, make sure you're not misreading the situation. Like, make sure that you're not being uncomfortable, and make sure you communicate. Like, if you're gonna take that opinion, like, because guys, I'm speaking to a very diverse group. I don't know where your madhab is. I don't know if you're Maliki and you take that opinion. I don't know if you're, you know, Hanbali and you take the other opinion. Wherever you are, just be consistent within your madhab, be consistent within the opinion, and those are all valid expressions of basically gender interactions. Tamam? I personally put my hand on my chest and I say, you know, I send you warm greetings from my heart, and most people understand without even having to explain. And sometimes when they do ask, I try to explain it and use it as an opportunity for da'wah.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for the amazing answer. So now, inshallah, we have some more questions on the form. Inshallah, if we don't read yours out, don't panic. Inshallah, we're going to get to it, inshallah, if time permits. So the next question, Sheikh, I think it's very applicable to specifically the MSA as well. So many of our activities, of course, the MSAs consist of both brothers and sisters. So many of our activities, organized by Islamic organizations beyond the MSA as well, are usually mixed. When should we make that call to like have an event segregated? When should we have that call to make that event mixed? How can this like gender interactions, knowledge be kind of superimposed on how events are planned and like lectures and all that other stuff in MSA?
Yeah, good. Murad, good question. I see sister want to address it quickly because it's related to the point that I mentioned earlier. Following up with the previous idea, so is it wrong to work in the medical field out of interest, not necessarily because of the need? Okay, look, sister, Allah bless you for that question. When a sister enters medical school and chooses to do this, is she most likely married? No, most likely she's not married yet. She gets married later. So in your process of getting married, like, first of all, it's okay to pursue a career out of interest and wanting to fulfill and wanting to participate and to be committed and to be involved in the community, as long as you don't lose yourself in the process and you don't lose the family orientation and the love for family, which is a huge part of Islam. There's no denying it. Amen? So if it comes at the expense of your family, like I would say, rethink your commitments and rethink your priorities. But if you're able to balance them, many women are, mashallah, that's great. But in the process of picking a husband, make sure that you marry somebody who will understand the line of work that you do and understand and appreciate the line of work that you do. And don't marry somebody who'll say, well, why do you have to go and work and touch another male or touch this and that if it's basically, if I'm providing for you and if it's not part of, if it's not a necessity, tamam? Because if that is your husband's opinion, listen to this carefully, if that is your husband's opinion Islamically, and there's a clash between your madhab and his madhab, in most of the cases, you would have to accept the madhab of your husband. And remember, I told you that there are multiple perspectives here. So because you would have to accept the madhab of your husband, it would make it sometimes a bit difficult because that's, it will be difficult in that space. So before getting into those marriage discussions, be clear about, like, this is where I stand. This is what my job dictates. Are you comfortable with that? I've accepted the Maliki opinion. That's the opinion that I choose, right? And the Maliki opinion is very, mashallah, like, again, very, very, it makes things, a lot of things in the West, a lot of, especially dealings, people dealings, makes it very, easy, makes it much more accessible. Khair, no problem, tamam. And there are like ways of reading the nusus, and that's a very respected part of the tradition, tamam. And we have to be, like, again, guys, we said this from the very beginning. We're not going to tell anybody else to lower their standards for us. Accommodate their standards. Be the best that you can. But in specific situations, we shouldn't basically force other people aggressively to hold the same standards that we do. As long as everybody's consistent within their methodology and within their frameworks. Tamam? Does that answer your question? Waiting for the response, inshallah. Hopefully it comes. Perfect. Wa jazakumullah khair. Tamam. Now, to come back to the question that you asked, Murad, about like which events as an MSA should you do mixed and which events should you do basically, alone. Look, events where there is like the focus is somewhere else, those are okay to have mixed. Like coming together and like basically listening to a lecture, listening to a talk, a discussion that applies to everybody, that's fine. Sensitive topics, like for example, let's say we're talking about marriage in a very specific way, it has to do with the brothers or the sisters, it's better to do those as like, segregated, because those sometimes require the speaker to go into specific details. Better to get a female to speak to the females about sensitive issues, male to speak to the males about sensitive issues. If it's like let's say for example an end of year dinner where people might dress up, most people will wear makeup, whatnot, like it's better that case to basically keep them separated as much as possible, to give sisters the space to be themselves, to give brothers the space to be themselves. So use your own discretion in basically like is it better to have this mix? Is it better to have it segregated? Is it better to have it in the same room but separated, right? and how should I lay out? How should I create the layout and use the space to prevent, distraction? And how do I set from the beginning the tone so that basically the conversations remain respectful? And as much as you try, after all the steps that you take, there will still be mistakes because people are naturally flawed. So don't blame yourself, do the best that you can. But at the end of the day, it's a personal responsibility on each and every person who's involved in that room and who's present to have taqwa of Allah in their interactions. Murad, does that answer your question?
Yes, inshallah. I hope for the person who asked it, but I like the answer, alhamdulillah.
What if it's a discussion activity and the focus becomes both sides? We go back to the rule: purposeful, concise, limited, and respectful, right? We go back to the basic rules that we discussed. So is it a public setting? Yes. In the conversations, are we being purposeful, respectful? Are we not using specific tones? Are we lowering our gaze, right? In the conversation. I know sisters, wallahi, even now, like I know sisters, I know doctors, I know, mashallah, people who are in very top positions within their fields. And when I talk to them, 95% of the time, they're looking down out of respect. They're not making eye contact. They're lowering their gaze. They will look up once in a while to affirm, respect, nod, but then most of the time they're, lowering their gaze. And that itself is, if it's done properly with respect, it can be really, really, really a good mediator in keeping all interactions respectful. If it's done properly, right? With a smile, with respect, and if it's done there's an art to it. There's an art to it, right? Because sometimes if it's done inconsistently, or if it's done in a specific way, it might actually backfire. But there's a way to do it. And that's why a lot of the lived experience in Islam, guys, it's not about reading books. The scholars of the past said whoever says their teacher is a book, they're misguided. You don't learn this stuff just by reading, oh, men and women, this is what you're supposed to do. You learn it by watching it. I learned this watching my uncles interact with the various women in their lives. I've watched this, in when I was raised in those communities where this was the language, the logic, it was a lived experience. And when you grow up and see it, you see the way it's done respectfully. You see that there's a flair to it. There's an art to make someone feel comfortable, but not to cross any bounds. So that's for those who are struggling to conceptually fully realize it, I say that subhanAllah, we grow up in a context now where it's there's no hayat in the public sphere. And everything goes. So anybody who's any way is Muslim in the smallest ways, endorse and celebrate, wow, mashallah, so sometimes we need to go back to those roots and go back to those lived experiences with respect to where everybody taban, comes from and their stages and whatever stage they're going through in their life.
All right, Sheikh, there's a couple of other few questions from sisters. A lot of them are asking, how do sisters specifically ask someone for marriage? And there's another question kind of related, but how much of themselves can the men see? So I guess in the process of the marriage, face, hair, etc.
Yeah. So in general, when you're getting to know somebody for marriage, it should be done in the presence of a family member from the sister side, a mahram, somebody basically to represent the sister, to be there to present as much as possible. For example, when I proposed to my wife, as an example, I went to the first I spoke to the father, I conveyed the message went to my my wife, and there was a rejection. She said no first, and then I made dua for her, khair inshallah. Then I proposed again a year later. Things had changed at that time. We had basically crossed path just a few times, no speech, but just cross path. And then I sent another proposal, and the second time she said yes. And when she said yes, meaning I'll sit down with him. So when I sat down with her, this is how usually it works. We sit down in the same living room, and first the family sits together. Her dad is there, her mom is there. We say hello, how are you? Quick conversation, a slow icebreakers. Then of course, the dad will get up and he will go do something. The mom will get up and do something. It's still in the living room, but they're around. They give us a little bit of privacy to be able to ask. more of those questions, to have that a little bit more private, like semi-private, not fully private conversations. And then, 2, 3, 4, 5 conversations. I would say maybe 4, 5, 6 hours in total. And then we decided, khalas, it's time to get married. Alhamdulillah. May Allah protect us, Ya Rabb. Ameen. Every marriage has its ups and downs, but I try to always, alhamdulillah, be grateful for everything that Allah has given me, and I'm very grateful for the marriage that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with. And may Allah keep us, Ya Rabb, protected from any envy, jealousy, hatred, and any wrong internal from us that can take away the barakah and any good that Allah has given us, Ya Rabb. Ameen, ameen. But again, it's as simple as that. Like, it's about sitting down, having those respectful conversations, and not dragging, not having cold feet, like being determined. And it's about, this is part of being ready for marriage, guys. You reach a point where you know what you're looking for the most part. You know who you are. You know a little, like there's a little bit of risk at the end of the day that you gotta take. That's life. You can't, like, you're not gonna know everything, but you know enough to be interested in the person as they are and in their growth and in their potential. So this is ideal, best practices. But is that my mom rejected my dad 3 times. Don't give up, you guys. Khair, inshallah. May Allah bless you. That's one of the sisters. She said that. So yeah. And then regarding basically the question of, I think related, if there was a relationship that was built on foundations before PPL, before public, purposeful, limited, lots of joking, lots of informality, how does someone respectfully inform the opposite gender without being disrespectful? Like, it's very simple. Like, I'm in a phase of my life where, like, I want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to be better. I want to do better. I want to achieve best practices in my life. I invite you to join me in that journey. Are you ready to make that commitment? Can we grow together? If sure, khalas, go ahead and get married. If not, drop it, move on. Don't compromise a relationship with Allah for anybody, any human being. It's not worth it. That's my advice.
So just in addition to that, so sisters are wondering how can they approach for marriage, because it's more common in cultures for brothers to do so. So how can sisters do it if it's not as common in their culture or not accepted, etc.?
Yeah. So like, it depends on your situation. Like, for example, you can approach your dad, depends. There's guys, all these questions, they have to be specific to your situation. Like, there's a lot of taqdeer. Let's say I have a good relationship, with I'll give you an example. I know like a few sisters in my mind, they have an amazing relationship with their dad. That basically in a passing conversation, they would say, Baba, what do you think of Abdullah? And that question, dad knows, khalas, I got you, honey. I'm going to go grab Abdullah and I'm going to make sure that, I'll send the message. Some dads are like that. They're on, khalas, they know it's done. Tamam? Other dads, masakeen, they're busy with work, they're hustling, bustling, and they don't have like the, every parent is amazing for having to put up with us as children. Let's start with there. But everybody has different skills. So it depends. There's no one way to do it. You could go through your dad, you could go through your mom, you could go through a common friend, you could go through an imam, you could go through a sheikh in the community, you could go through like a sister, a respected ustad in the community. There are so many ways. The last way that I would recommend, if every other option is exhausted or unavailable, is to basically send a direct message. But that direct message should be brief and concise and straight to the point. But that's like as an absolute last necessary step. Usually it won't work if it comes to that level. Usually sending a message through a friend is very is good. Like somebody who's married already, sending a message through them would be best. But if you have to, for whatever reason, and this is like an absolute, I'm saying 0.001% of the case, if you're going to do it, should be concise and straight to the point. AssalamuAlaikum. Tamam, straight to the point. Someone is asking about you potentially for marriage. Advise. That's it. Is there a number of like a family member that my family or the family of the interest can basically communicate with? And that's what guys usually do. Like if there's no, like if, for example, if like this happens, if you're at a conference and you see a girl, and if you don't ask right there and then and get her number, you're never going to see her again. For whatever reason. Sometimes what the guy will do, Assalamu alaikum sister, can I please have your wali's number? That's it. Can I have your wali's number? Sister understood, here's my dad's number, or she'll give him 967 11 11 if she's not interested. A random number. That's not true. Like, so like that's the case. Hopefully that helps.
All right, Sheikh. So now I guess the next question then, I'm gonna group two, or actually three questions together. So basically, how do we, so when it comes to things like we talked about the salam and like, for example, what to do in a situation with like non-Muslim, like Muslim sisters and brothers when they come across each other in public. So the question here is more to do with things like eye contact and such. And for example, say like an MSA brother or like an MSA sister is walking by another person in the hallway. I guess taking into salam as well, when it comes to eye contact, how do we kind of navigate that when we deal with things like professors or maybe bosses or physicians, or for example, each other when we're talking to another sister or brother in the hallways for an important, purposeful reason in public? How do we navigate things like eye contact in that case, if there's no lust behind it, especially?
Yeah. So again, it's about like, in general being consistent. If you have a professional, committed face, respectful, you're looking, showing respect, and most of the time you're lowering your gaze, I would say that's completely fine. And if there's a culture like where with teachers or whatnot, where let's say 20%, 30% of the time you have to look up notes and whatnot, that's completely acceptable, completely fine. Tamam. Just want to keep it brief because it's getting late.
Inshallah,
I don't want to hold people beyond. If you have any specific questions for your specific context, I don't mind, inshallah, if you email me to at hosamaisnacanada.com, and that's a good way, inshallah, to message if you have any specific questions.
There's one question, Sheikh, if you're
Sure.
willing to take more. Let's say you are a brother or a sister in the MSA and you see a brother or a sister walking by in the halls, or she or he is sitting at a table and you have to walk by it. What should you do? If you ignore, they might take it the wrong way.
Yeah. So some of the fuqaha, like you will see, for example, sometimes the fuqaha, and by fuqaha I mean the jurists, the Muslim lawyers, when they're looking at the text, they say it's better, like it's impermissible for a guy to say salam to a girl when they're alone. And basically he's walking by, he should not initiate the salam, but if she initiates the salam, it's permissible for him to say salam. But that's ijtihad. That's their own ijtihad based on the context that they're living in. Tamam? There's no specific like hadith or ayat that they're going back to. They're just saying this is based on like it's about what would be weird, what would be acceptable given that specific context, based on my understanding at least. And may Allah forgive us for any misunderstandings. But in that specific case, tamam, it's best to keep things formal and to keep things as respectful as possible. So like if you're walking by, lowering your gaze, AssalamuAlaikum, as simple as that, keeping it courteous like that, no issue. But if it's just a girl and a guy, it's better not to say anything. Tamam? If there's a group, the person who's coming says salam to the group, and the group, one of the people can respond to the salam, that's fine. Tamam? And sometimes, like especially in a public context, like here, where sisters, especially wearing the hijab, jazakumullah khair wa barakallahu fikum, might feel lonely, might feel like unappreciated, or might feel like they're really struggling by themselves. I think it's very it's fine to just as you walk by, assalamu alaikum, something like that is fine. And it's about the tone and the way that it's done. I think in the context that we're living in, that's fine as long as it's done respectfully. And it's on everybody's end to interpret that in the most respectful way, not to misread into it and not to read too much into it and just, okay, we're just engaging in greeting, we're saying salam, and it's as simple as that.
So Sheikh, we just have a few questions left, inshallah.
Take your time, inshallah.
One of them being, inshallah, I think a few are just coming in as well, but this question is on social media rather. And it's more about, we talked about the use of social media. How does it, where's the ruling on things like posting, especially for like sisters or brothers, posting pictures of themselves on their social media platforms and such? Like, is there a nuance there? Is there any special case there? What are the thoughts on this issue, inshallah?
Yeah, so That's a good question. Yani, honestly, like I think we have really pushed the social media taking a picture posting to a whole other level, and it goes really beyond the acceptable. That's my opinion. It really goes beyond the acceptable. A lot of poses are too suggestive, too sexual in nature, and if you're not selling a product, you're selling yourself in many ways. And I have to be explicit in saying that. Forgive me. And guys sometimes do too much. Like, look, if it's suggestive, if you're depicting yourself in a way that is only meant for a romantic, and from an Islamic point of view, a romantic relationship, whether you're a guy or a girl, that should not be acceptable. That should not be acceptable. Tamam? And girls more specifically, at least within our culture, because guys tend to be more, and again, there are exceptions, but guys tend to tend to be more infatuated with their eyes, and that's why things like websites, without mentioning specifically, that give women the opportunity to post explicit pictures, for fans and whatnot. They make hundreds, thousands of dollars. Whereas like if a guy were to do that, very rarely will you get the same reaction. Like, data talks, guys. Money talks. Let's stop being like excessively idealistic and forget our human natures. Let's just be realistic for a second. So I would say, like, and again, even as we grow up, we mature more, we realize our vulnerabilities more, and we come to regret some of our earlier decisions. But I would say that it's best to not, like, I personally don't post any pictures, with me and my wife or my family in general, because I like for that to be, private. I believe that that's confidential. I don't want, when let's say for example, I'll give you an example, guys. And this is about an etiquette in general. Let's say I'm taking a small piece of food and I'm putting it in my baby's mouth, in my bayan, my little daughter. And my wife happens to take that picture, and it looks very beautiful, and it's a beautiful moment. I personally, I don't want to be the reason that a father who doesn't have a child, or a mother who doesn't have a child, looks at that picture and feels broken or hurt. Feels like, why don't I have that? So that's how I that's how I see it. That's the way that I think it. Allah has given each and every one of us blessings, and there is a way to showcase those blessings, but not in the video, auditory, like a explicit way that social media, and it sets expectations that are very difficult. It's very damaging in many ways. And I'm not saying don't have a physical, like, social media presence, but just be like, have taqwa of Allah. Don't post pictures that are like inviting idealism, and don't be somebody that you're not. Don't be somebody that you're not. And try your best as much as possible to rail that in, to rail the need for likes, to rail the need for for attention, and to post something that is productive. Like, what are you selling? What are you marketing? Are you marketing an idea, or you're marketing yourself? Like, I don't know. And this concept of like ujub, self-ujub, and self-admiration and self-worship, in a sense, I don't think it's part of our tradition, whether guys or girls. I don't think it's part of our tradition. I think we took it very far, and social media hijacks that part of us needing affirmation and needing attention in the wrong way. And that applies to both, guys, and girls. So, like, for example, can a sister have a picture of herself, like for LinkedIn, for a specific account where it's a formal pose? Yes, I think it's fine, because she's wearing her hijab. And as I mentioned, that's what's publicly required for her to be publicly in the work, like in the public sphere. But those poses, and like the specific poses that are maybe suggestive, and of course that's socially constructive in many ways. But I think a part of us knows kind of where the limits are, and if we connect to Allah and have taqwa of Allah, we become more and more like in tune with the nature that is within us. I would say that those are inappropriate and not acceptable, and should be avoided. Does that answer your question?
I'm not sure who asked it, but inshallah, very, very good answer. Jazakallah khair. Sister Sarah has one. Sorry, go ahead, Sheikh.
There's a related question coming here about regarding that. What is the opinion on social media influencers who make living off of posting pictures? I worry. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, I'll tell you something here. This is a good tangent. Ahmad ibn Hanbal did not like to say it's haram. He wouldn't say it's haram. He would say akrahu. I dislike it. I'm uncomfortable with it. And when he said that, his students understood that, that's his way of saying, I don't have evidence to say it's haram specifically. And there's so many examples and nuances that I don't want to, because when you say something is haram, you're saying Allah has said, you're speaking on behalf of Allah. So to err on the side of caution, what the scholars would say in the past was, I dislike it. I'm uncomfortable with it. And the students understood from that, like, I'm going to avoid that out of cautious. I'm not going to judge people who are in it. There's a lot going on. It's a very interesting world and there are so many changes. But I personally don't like it. I'm personally uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable, with it and by it. And I know the inside of, influencers' lives, not everybody, but I've seen and I heard, especially in the circles like, shuyukh and whatnot. And it's just, it's toxic. Not everybody. Like some people are selling ideas and some people are, some people are marketing. Some people are doing great dawah. Some people are selling products and some people are, but they're doing it in a way where they're not the center. But if you have to put yourself into the center of it and it becomes like self-admiration and ujub and, like, when you push that line. I personally wouldn't be comfortable with it. Tamam? Guys, like, this has become a trope now in popular culture where you have like the influencer who takes pictures with these like kids, oh, my little kids that I'm helping in Afghanistan and whatnot. And then after the picture is done, they show the most despicable face to those people. Wallah, I've seen that with my own eyes and it's gruesome and it's very disgusting. Islam didn't tell us to showcase, the best of us and then live very, terrible lives behind the scene. Islam said, do the best that you can and keep as much of that private with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, I'm not suggesting that all influencers are like that. Again, I've been very clear in saying I'm uncomfortable with it and I would not personally, not a big fan.
All right, inshallah, I can ask the other question. In the MSA and other Muslim spaces, Muslim hijabi modest women feel objectified and sexualized by their Muslim colleagues because of the excessive amount of public joking on marriage, as well as general jokes about women after marriage. Often these women are truly just there to work and serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Message to brothers and sisters relating to this. As a sister, I feel uncomfortable sometimes.
My message to the sisters first and foremost is, if you're wearing the hijab, you have every public right to exist publicly and to have your voice heard. Your voice is not awra, against what some people say without any evidence. And you have every right to participate publicly, and your voice is appreciated and needed. And even though you might be doing the best that you can, Aisha was the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, but they still didn't spare effort in accusing her and saying certain things about her. So, sometimes think about Aisha radiallahu anha. She was the mother of the believers and one of the best, but even she was accused in her honor and her dignity. But Allah raised her, proved her innocence in the Quran, and she earned the title of an incredible mother of the believers. So just because somebody has a problem with you, as long as you're doing things halal, as long as you have evidence for what you're doing, and don't let it get to you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all of us, ya Rabb, ameen. And for the brothers, sisters who already have it difficult, please don't add to the difficulty. And have taqwa of Allah, and lower your gaze, and be respectful, and give them the space to thrive as you have that space to thrive. And as the Quran says, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. To them belongs what is expected of them, right? And in general, like, they have the same rights, that you do Islamically. And sometimes, unfortunately, and I will say this, we come from, I don't want to say patriarchal, because there's nothing wrong with a patriarchy. There's nothing wrong with like a matriarchy specifically, but we do come, many of us, from male-dominated regions, and that doesn't mean we show disrespect to our sisters, and we have to challenge those cultural assumptions. And at the same time, like the At the same time, what happens is there's like a pendulum that swings. Sometimes, we go a little bit this extreme, then we go a little bit in that extreme, and the balance is somewhere in between. But as society around us moves from like extreme feminism to like extreme toxic masculinity, and then everything in between, like remember that Islam is about moderation, and Islam is a religion of wasata. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. It's about wasatiyya. So and earlier, like scholars have considered the aqidah of the Muslims to be like a aqidah of balance, the belief system to be a belief system of balance. And the Quran is full of examples of the equilibrium and balance. So people are going to sway in many directions. Give sisters the space that they deserve. Give them the respect that they deserve. Let's advise each other when we make mistakes. I will make mistakes. Sisters have every right to advise me. When you make a mistake, I have every right also to advise with a respectful and compassionate way. So let's not look at each other as like at war or at odds or against each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ, that Allah created you from a single soul, from the same soul. We share the same, duty towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the same rights and responsibilities in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are differences between males and female. The Quran is clear about that, and those are framed in the Quran and the Sunnah, and we respect that. ولا تتمنوا ما فضل الله ببعضكم على بعض للرجال نصيب مما اكتسبوا وللنساء نصيب مما اكتسبن. Don't wish for what the other gender has been privileged by in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the end of the day, we're working together, not against each other. We complete, not compete. And when we compete with each other to bring the best out of one another, not against each other to ruin each other.
So Sheikh, really quickly, we have like some other questions coming in. How many more questions should we ask just so that we can kind of tune them so that we have a priority?
Let's take two more, because I know a lot of people here are very respectful and they're not going to leave until we're done. So just to respect those people who are respectful, we're just going to take two more and then give people a chance to go on with their life.
Inshallah. Okay, so I guess I'll try and combine one then. Or inshallah. One person is insisting on this because they don't want to ask this themselves. Anonymous, so I just want to get this across. So basically, if someone has, for whatever reason, just does not have any lust, like for example, they don't have, well, it was not specified, but they wanted to, I think, emphasize this. They just didn't have any feelings of lust. Would such things like, for example, just want to make sure the question is asked properly. If you just don't have lust at all, do you still need to lower your gaze? And I'm assuming take those other precautions in extension as well. Is in that situation, is there any nuance, basically, I think is what the question is asking.
So, like, there's a difference in not having lust at all and not having lust for the person. Like, are you saying is the person saying I'm asexual, like I have no lust at all? Or is the person saying I have no lust towards this person? Because we talked about consistency, just be consistent regardless of whether you have lust to that person or not. But
yeah.
if the person is like they don't have lust, period, they don't have lust towards anything, that they're asexual completely, then remember that could be you, but that's not necessarily the person that you're dealing with. So you still have to be consistent in how you're interpreted, because yes, you're responsible for your actions and you're not responsible for the interpretation, but you're also responsible from an Islamic point of view for going the extra mile in being cautious that your actions are not misread or misinterpreted. And the evidence of that is when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was walking with his wife late at night and it was dark, and they were like, you could only see the shades. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, like a few people came and they walked by and they kind of looked away. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ worried that they might misunderstood, like who is the Prophet ﷺ with at this time in an area that was unusual. So he went to them and says, this is my wife, to clarify. Don't assume this is my wife, and he made it clear. So we have a duty to basically clarify so that we're not misunderstood. People are going to still misunderstand, but we do the best that we can as much as possible. That's why consistency is key. Amen? Does that help, Murad?
Yeah, inshallah. I think, from looking at this question, I think it was the first case, but Jazakallah khair for answering both. And I think Sister Sada, if you want to check Slack, there's one last question, inshallah, we can just end with, inshallah, if possible.
Yes, for sure. Are you sinful and do you need to make tawbah if any of your gender interaction mishaps or shortcomings have led others to fall into fault or sin themselves?
Look, we do general tawbah anyway. You can't go wrong with general tawbah, general repentance, but you're not responsible for how somebody else acts based on unintended, things from you. Like, right? If you intended it, may Allah forgive. We all have our shortcomings. If you didn't, you're not responsible. If you intended it, you're only partially responsible. If you didn't intend it, you're not responsible at all. And either way, Allah forgives all sins. Allah forgives all sins. Even zina, Allah forgives zina. Allah forgives all of that as long as you make the commitment never to do it again, the commitment to reverse the wrong by doing as much good as possible, right? And you don't, just be careful not to let shaitan mess with you and use your weakness against you and use your vulnerability against you.
All right, I think that's 2 questions. I just want to first say Jazakallah khair for all of you guys for coming out. It was truly, alhamdulillah, so amazing to see so many questions being asked. I know I benefited from it, and I'm sure all of you guys did. I hope all of you guys did. I also want to thank you, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for coming out, taking your time out. It truly was really helpful and beneficial. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, grant you abundance of ajr, and to your family for taking your time out. Guess we can end it here. Again, guys,
I just want to say again, the work that the MacMSA is doing and the MSAs are doing, may Allah bless you. May Allah keep you all steadfast and sincere. Keep it up, keep going. We really, really need this work. So may Allah bless you. And again, whatever I've said, all good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever is in a shortcoming, may Allah forgive us, and may Allah allow us to learn and to grow together. We're in this together. We're working together to serve Allah together. And so we invest in each other and keep up the great work. I know Hisham wants me to say that the MacMSA is the best MSA, even though I have, spent more than 15 years, I think 10, 15 years at UFT St. George. I love my UFT St. George MSA, but I got to tell you guys, the MacMSA, yeah, you definitely are the best at this time. But that can change. Don't let that compliment destroy you. You have it now on record, but don't let it break your back. Keep going, and don't worry, we're coming for you, inshallah. All right,
I just want to say Jazakallah khair before we conclude. I know that there was a few questions. I want to thank Sheikh Hosam, subhanAllah, for coming out and making this event a lot longer than I thought we would have time for, and as a result, a lot of people got to ask their questions. And may Allah reward you, Sheikh, and allow it to be a sadaqah jariyah, all of our actions and all of the ilm that we're gonna inshallah distribute amongst ourselves as well. And for all of you, I do apologize on my behalf as well if there were any questions that were missed or weren't asked in depth. Again, Sheikh Hosam, mashallah, out of his own generosity, has made himself available. So inshallah, please contact him, especially if your scenario is something that is very specific and needs some insight and an answer. Don't hesitate to reach out to Sheikh Hosam or any other shuyukh in your local area. But Jazakallah khair, everyone, and may Allah reward you all, ameen, and help us benefit from this knowledge, ameen.